Zealand, Dr. Annette Kendall moved to Columbia, Missouri in 2015. She opened her first business at the age of 5, selling her neighbors the flowers out of her own gardens. 5 years later, she became a paid blogger, writing notes for her classmates and receiving 50 cents a piece for her efforts. Later phases of her entrepreneurial career before she got into academia included teaching children's theater, accounting, and operating a dictaphone. Thanks to a clerical error and a slight exaggeration of her calculus knowledge, Dr. Kendall was awarded her PhD in 2019, despite never graduating high school and not having an undergraduate degree. Now a faculty member at the Trulaske College of Business at the University of Missouri-Columbia, she teaches courses in entrepreneurship, where students learn how to develop creative thinking and complex problem-solving skills. Dr. Kendall has a special interest in empowering neurodiverse students to perceive entrepreneurship as a way for them to create more control over their futures. She has one husband, one 21-year-old son, and one dog, and has enjoyed the same breakfast every day for nearly 6 years. So with that, please, Dr. Kendall, tell us about entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Kristen. You know what, when someone else reads it out loud, I sound like such a weirdo. I truly am. So there, embrace it, right? So thank you for doing the introduction. That means I don't need to do it. So yes, today I'm here to talk about something I'm super passionate about, which is neurodiversity, the relationship between neurodiversity and entrepreneurship. And so this concept of neurodiversity, what this means is that it's an approach to take into for those who have been diagnosed with conditions, neuro conditions such as ADHD, dyslexia, autism spectrum disorder, dyscalculia, which is dyslexia but with numbers, that instead of thinking of these people as checklists of deficits, to actually think about, okay, what kind of skills, I like the word superpowers, these people have, given that their brains are wired differently. And as you may have already guessed, I'm one of these people, right? So I've never been formally diagnosed because I don't need to be, but so I was someone who late in life found out that, well, it's pretty clear that I'm on the autism spectrum because girls show it a lot different than boys. And I am highly entrepreneurial. And so this is what I'm going to talk about. And I have a bit of ADHD, ADD as well. So this is what I'm going to talk about is how, framed in the context of entrepreneurship, what you think might be weaknesses or deficits are actually advantages. So I'm going to share my screen here. I have a couple of kind of slidey kind of things, and then I'm going to allow time for questions because whenever I talk about this, there's always a ton of questions. So just for autism, I'm going to talk about autism specifically first. They call it autism spectrum disorder, which covers the range from people with Aspergers, or, you know, it's a spectrum, right? Ranging from probably a ton of academics to people who are really non-verbal. But, you know, even people with autism who are non-verbal can attend college, as we've seen many examples lately that I've been finding. So autism spectrum disorder, I hate that word. I found another one the other day which says ASC, autism spectrum condition. I prefer that because, you know, really me and a lot of others, we don't think we're broken. We don't need fixed. We think we're freaking amazing, actually, hilarious. And so we don't like the term disorder. But you can see this. For people with autism, following characteristics are often seen as deficits, right? Social detachment, the fact that people on the spectrum tend to not be that social. They don't have a lot of friends. They find kind of social interaction really nerve-wracking. They don't understand. I remember being like, how do people how do people know how to be friends? Like, I thought it was something you had to learn. And that's what girls tend to do is girls who are on the spectrum tend to watch like the popular girls in class and imitate what they're doing to, you know, figure out like, okay, that's what you do to get friends, right? I thought everybody did that. I didn't know that some people just know this. But also keep in mind that just because we're socially detached doesn't mean to say that we're miserable, right? Psychologists came along and decided that happiness you can't be happy if you're not social, like if you haven't got friends. But that is so far from the truth. A lot of people actually get more happiness from learning, interacting with objects, experimenting, inventing. Nikola Tesla, who some of you might have heard of, an inventor from, you know, a wee while ago now, he described his life as nothing short of continuous rapture for the periods that he was able to invent and he was isolated from people. Hyperactivity, desire for independence, idealism. So let me show you how these things are actually really good advantages to be an entrepreneur. And we also know, when I get to ADHD, we know that 80%, well, we don't know, they estimate around 80%, as high as 80% of entrepreneurs actually have some kind of neuro disorder, are neurodiverse, so have ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, or on the spectrum, right? So there's a definite relationship there. So if you are socially detached, if you're not that bothered about, you know, being the popular kid in school, the good thing is you're less likely to be influenced by what everyone else thinks, right? And if you're less likely to be influenced by what everyone else thinks, you're more likely to innovate, because innovation is going against what exists already. It's presenting something new. And everybody who has innovated, who has come up with some new invention, when they started, they were a little bit weird, you know, that'll never work, etc. And then, of course, the invention gets legitimized in the marketplace, and then, you know, now they're a genius. But you think about Einstein, Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, flip, you know, not known for his social prowess, Mark Zuckerberg, right? You know, that'll never work, but they don't really care what other people think. And also when you're not like, oh, I have to be with people every minute of the day, guess what? It gives you more time to pursue your own interests, right? And form your own ideas. So already you are kind of a step ahead of most of the population in terms of your capacity to innovate. And it's in 2018, 2019, we saw that in the US, 2.9% of children aged 3 to 17 have been diagnosed as being on the spectrum. That's not even including, you know, all the girls potentially that we now know exhibit symptoms completely different, and those who haven't been diagnosed. So, you know, if there's only 3% of you, you're in this minority, but you have a super, super good advantage, right? Because not everybody can think like you. Not everyone sees the world like you do. Hyperactivity, super good for entrepreneurship. There are tons of very successful entrepreneurs who will tell you they only figured out later in life that they had ADD or ADHD. And they will say, if there was a pill I could take to take this away, I would not take it, because I think that having this ADHD has been why I'm so successful, right? They can better at multitasking, so jumping quickly from one thing to the next to the next. More inclined to just take action, because you don't get hung up on, oh, what will people think? Or, oh, what if it goes wrong? You just have an idea and you're like, I'm just going to do it and see what happens, right? Entrepreneurship, you need to have a little bit of that in you, and can push through setbacks. And this goes for people with learning challenges across the board, right? You are used to having to dig that little bit deeper, try that little bit harder at schoolwork. And so when it comes to launching a venture, you're already used to like grinding through the mud, right? Putting in the hard yards, not giving up, trying and trying and trying again. So, adversity is a friend if you are going to be an entrepreneur one day, because you've had that experience. I have to keep an eye on the time. Desire for independence. So we know that people on the spectrum, and this may relate to many other conditions as well, but they have a strong belief, I'm generalizing here, not everybody on the spectrum is the same as everybody else. Goodness me, no. But tend to have a strong belief in their ability to overcome obstacles. And that goes back to the point that I made earlier. But if you have that belief in yourself, to say, I can do this, just, get out of it, leave me alone. I can do this, even though someone watching you, my husband, for example, I can't climb fences. I just don't. And I'm also really bad at directions. I get lost all the time. Sometimes, you don't know if I'm really, really clever because I have this PhD, or if I'm really just a big idiot because little basic things I have trouble with. But I want to do it myself, right? I want to overcome it myself. Don't help me. And so this is another good thing that you're learning for entrepreneurship. And then finally, idealism. So in terms of social entrepreneurship, in terms of changing the world, right? It's an absolute myth that people on the spectrum don't have emotions and don't care about people. We definitely do, but we just find it difficult to interact one-on-one. And we also we tend to experience emotions so intensely that it physically hurts us, right? So it's uncomfortable for us. So we tend to kind of shut off really quickly. Somebody dies or something, and we can just look like we're not experiencing emotion at all, but it's our body's kind of defense mechanism, right? A protection thing. So, and we might not have those one-on-one relationships. We might not be very, very close with people, but we tend to be super passionate about improving the world, right? Humanity as a whole, helping people as a whole, and driven by this passionate sense of social justice and responsibility. So, in terms of social entrepreneurship, neurodiverse people tend to be drawn to that kind of entrepreneurship. So I'm just gonna stop for a minute there and check the chat, just making sure there's no questions here. Yeah, Temple Grandin, that movie is super, super good. That is a great movie, yeah. In terms of my role as director in the Centre for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, I am at the moment canvassing for funds to create I can send these slides, no problem. Create a transition program for neurodiverse high school students to come to Mizzou, especially those who wouldn't have otherwise thought about college. So if they're nonverbal or have problems communicating, and working with them 2 or 3 years out before they start at Mizzou, so that making sure that we have those resources and support systems in place for when they come to Mizzou. Also, we're going to be, when I get the money, starting up a weekly podcast that will highlight neurodiverse entrepreneurs. And so telling their stories, right? And so this will again be aimed at high school students and young people to inspire and empower them towards entrepreneurship. So let me just go on to this one. I'm doing okay for time. So I get carried away when I talk about this subject, and all of a sudden my time is up. So this one, well, this is a little bit, this is kind of hard to read. I'm sorry. This was a bad one to put up there. I can send it for sure. But we know that another reason entrepreneurship is kind of a good avenue for neurodiverse people is we know that people with ADHD and other learning challenges and autism are likely to get discriminated against in the workplace, right? They find it hard to get jobs. And I had this statistic somewhere, but I know from just last night, I was writing a report that over half of people with autism spectrum disorder aren't employed. And I can't remember the statistic on ADD or ADHD. So entrepreneurship is a really good way of taking control over your future, even just learning entrepreneurial skills, right? It's a really good way of kind of gaining independence over your future. And also, you know, when you're self-employed, you dictate the terms under which you work, right? I'm really lucky. So I had my own company in New Zealand. I worked for other people, but I always had positions where I had a lot of autonomy. And then I had my own company. But I am so blessed to work with inside the Trulas College of Business, because our Dean Vinze, when he interviewed me for this position, he said, "You know why I want you for this job?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't know, for this position." He said, "Because you're quirky." And oh my gosh, that makes my nose tingle right now just saying that. This is the first time in my life that someone says, "I want you because you're quirky," rather than, yeah, you have these skills, but you need to be more of this or less of that, right? Dean Vinze, right in that moment, gave me permission to bring my whole self to work. And that is the expectation of me. When I'm in meetings, people expect that I'm going to be a little bit different. So I, at last, don't have to mask any side of me at all. I don't always get things right? We can be in a meeting and I can see Dean Vinze sometimes cringing because I have no filter. Things just come out my mouth. I can see his facial expressions all the time. Not all the time, but you know, that's allowing me to do my best work because I can bring my whole self to the College of Business. And so that's what I want to create for young people. You know, there's that saying, be the person that you needed when you were younger. And my goodness, I needed someone like me. My childhood was not fun. So you as an entrepreneur, so understanding your distinctive strengths. If you are someone who's always questioning conventional wisdom and norms, you're the person that seems to be always the devil's advocate, right? You're always the one that's like, yeah, I don't get it though, right? That makes you, I can't even read my own slide, it's so small. Progress in society is created by people like that, right? We need you. This willingness to challenge authority. I have a healthy disrespect for authority. Maybe that's what you call it. But my brain doesn't allow me to see, say, President Moon Choi and be like, ooh, I'm just like, what up, Moon? You know, like it doesn't matter to me who the person is that's saying something. I'm more about the idea rather than the position, right? So, and lots of neurodiverse people say that, and that's how you innovate as well, is challenging authority. Seeing the marvelous, seeing the mundane as marvelous. If you're like, one day when I started teaching, I actually went into class. I'd been looking at that, it was fall, right? And the leaves were so beautiful. And I got into class and it was such a nice day. And I'm like, we can't be inside today. We can't be having this class. everything is so amazingly beautiful. You need to be outside. Now, I'm pretty sure the students didn't be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Let's go out and witness the, beauty of nature. I'm sure they were like, woohoo, no class today. But if you see that the mundane is marvelous, again, that's a really good strength to be able to innovate. Detachment from ideas and norms, I've said about that. And don't worry about time. Don't worry about, a lot of people who are neurodiverse worry that, well, if I can't create my own business because you have to be good at sales and I'm really not good at talking to people. That's, a really big thing. Don't worry about that, because entrepreneurship is actually a team activity. I'm going to stop sharing that now. So multitasking is not my strength. Entrepreneurship is a team activity. There's nobody in the world, whether you have ADHD, autism, whatever, or you don't. There's no one in the world that can create the product or service and be an expert and create a great product or service, sell it, and handle the finances, right? There's no one in the world that can do those three things to the level that you have to be able to do if you want a successful, sustainable business. It's a team activity. So what you do is go, what part can I do and who do I need to put around me to support myself in the other parts, right? So yeah, don't let that stop. I'm not a people person. I wouldn't be able to sell it. Don't let that stop you. You get somebody who can do that part just like everyone else does. So finally, just to finish this off, is this one here. So I've just ADD, ADHD, ASD, autism spectrum disorder. That needs to be a C. And entrepreneurship, dyslexia, whatever. Deficit or superpower. So inattentive, hyperactive, impulsive. This is what it might say on your school report, right? But you frame that in the context of entrepreneurship. Guess what? You are good at multitasking. You have extreme faith in your ability to overcome obstacles. You're less likely to get delayed by overthinking an idea. You take action. These are good things, right? A loner, right? I was gonna say a swear word, a cuss word there. I'm from New Zealand and we swear like pirates. A loner, that is not a bad thing. Just stop with the loner stuff. Versus a superpower. You're not obsessed with being social, willing to challenge the status quo. You don't care what other people think. It's not even that you telling yourself you don't care. It just doesn't even go on your radar that you should care what others think, right? More time to pursue interests and form novel ideas. So that is me. 6 minutes to go. Woohoo! Did it. All right. Questions. Questions, comments.
Do you want to do the poll, Annette?
Oh yes, let's do the poll. Sorry, Kerry, I had a poll. So I'm going to ask you here, what is your potential superpower? So it came up, but now it's gone. There it is. What is your superpower? So I'm going to fill it in myself.
Annette, what is dyspraxia?
Oh my gosh. Dyspraxia. Yeah, that's just gone out of my head. Dyspraxia. Impacts your ability to plan and process motor tasks. That's right. Dyspraxia is more about motor. So you have a language problem, difficulty with perception, like depth perception. So that's about action.
Okay, I'm about to end the poll. Oh, a few more people are answering now. More people are answering.
And you know what? This is so cool because the more I talk about this, last week I was in a meeting and one of the professors in the Trillas College of Business, because I send out resources where you can find out, one of the professors said, guess what? I took that test and I'm on the autism spectrum. Like I'm an Aspie. And he was so happy because he's like, oh my gosh, this makes sense now. And I'm like, yes. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, look, there's over a third of the people here today that have ADHD or ADD. So I'm really glad to hear that, because some of you at least will have got something personal out of what I've been talking about. And I know that others of you probably know someone on the spectrum or with a challenge. But yeah, let's go to questions. Or I would contribute to funding that podcast. Yeah, maybe I should start a Kickstarter or something for the podcast, and instead of trying to get a big rich donor to help me.